Voters have until 7 o'clock tonight to decide if they want to start the process of becoming a home rule county. That would give local leaders more control over county business like elections, zoning, and public services. They would also be exempt from following some state laws, but only ones that allow exemptions for home rule counties. Tonight's special election is just the first step. A commission would then draft a charter that voters would take up in November. Joining me this morning to discuss this is our 9 News legal expert, Whitney Traylor. Whitney, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Great to have you. Let's start with what voters are specifically being asked.
Right. So on the ballot, it's really just two issues. The first issue is, hey, do we want to be a home rule county? And if that's a yes, then the second question is going to be which of those candidates will be members of the commission, because if this passes, the commission will then put together a charter, a home rule charter that the voters would vote on in November. So right now for today, it's really, hey, are we going to do the home rule? And then secondly, which of these candidates am I voting for? And there's 49 candidates on the ballot, 21 will be on the commission.
Okay, interesting. Now, if this might be somebody's first time hearing about a home rule county in the first place, but it has a deep history. What is that?
Yeah. It does have a deep history, and there's a lot of misinformation about home rule. It's really, and it's very important and relevant that people understand what they're voting on. So the first home rule for municipalities was in the Colorado Constitution back in 1902. So this goes way back. And then in the 1970s, we started to get county home rule, and it was Weld. I think Weld County was the first county. So right now, Weld and Pitkin counties are home rule counties. Denver and Broomfield are a modified version because they're sort of a city-county kind of combination. And then there's over 100 other counties that have charters but aren't technically home rule. So it has been in our Constitution and in our history. And the real issue is how much local control if you're a home rule county, you have more local control. And the question that the courts look at is this of statewide concern? Because if it's of statewide concern, the state law will supersede. The counties can't override
Explain
that.
what you mean when you say, is it of statewide concern?
Right, so something of statewide concern. And I heard folks who are proponents who are arguing for home rule saying that, hey, we disagreed with how COVID-19 was handled, for example, we would have opted out of that. They wouldn't have been able to do that because it's very clear. I mean, the Constitution is clear in stating, hey, these are the kind of things that affect localities, zoning type issues, employment issues for their county employees, various certain criminal laws that are really specific to that. But here, when you have the state imposing certain restrictions or laws, that is going to be the state. The counties can't override that. So for example, in COVID-19, they couldn't have come up with a different policy, maybe on certain very specific, minute things. But if the state has said, hey, we're ruling on this, for example, COVID or other laws, then the state has that authority. They
supersede
Yeah,
that.
It's a preemption doctrine.
Okay, interesting. So they're voting on if it's a statewide issue, if it's a local issue. Explain that too.
Yeah, so they're not necessarily voting on that. They're saying, hey, are we going to be home rule? And if that's the case, then we may have more local control in certain issues. But if they tried to, say, pass a law that was already being dealt with by the state, or even if it's if it's a state and local issue, the state will still have that authority, and there'll be litigation about that. And you can look at Weld County. Weld County hasn't been able to opt out of a number of these other laws, and it's very conservative, even more conservative than Douglas County. Oh. So, yeah.
Let's say that voters do approve
Yes.
this home rule county in this election that's going on right now. What does that mean looking like going forward for them? Of course, you were saying that's not the end of this process.
That's not the end of the process. So then those 21 members of that commission that will be voted on today, so if it passes, they say, yes, we want to be home rule, here's the 21 candidates. They will then come together and put together a charter. That charter will then be voted on in November by the Douglas County voters. If that passes, that goes into effect January 1 of 2026. So this process has been incredibly fast, which is a lot of people's concerns. Actually.
Can the charter be rejected or will it be accepted?
Yes, it can be rejected, and then they'd have to go back and modify the charter. But I think the biggest issue is if it passes now. Okay. If it passes now, I suspect the charter would also probably pass.
Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. We've got to start with square one, which of course is this election. Whitney, we appreciate your helping us out.
Sure thing. Good to be here.
All right.